This is the Cult of Honesty. It's the place for honesty. I'm not convinced that we're here yet, but it's a challenge being honest, and we are the cult. Simply because so many people, when you start brainstorming, when you start thinking about things in different ways, they have the propensity of saying you're a heretic or you're part of a cult or whatever, and so we've simply accepted the title, the challenge, and we are willing to be honest about every subject that we deal with. Tonight, the topic was going to be modesty, but unfortunately, my wife could not make it. And Esther Ann was on her program Sunday, and it was a wonderful program, Reflections. And my wife wanted to be on the follow-up, and so we're going to shift the topic tonight because I think it would be not a very good show without my wife, because she really wants to go round two with this, and I think that most people do. And so we're going to shift the topic a bit, and we're going to talk about love, what love is, and we are going to demonstrate once again, and we're not going to push this, but we are going to demonstrate that atheists and theists can come together and talk about love. We can talk about the Bible. We can talk about whatever we want to and have lots and lots of respect. And so without any hesitation, I want to get into the hangout and find out who is there. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
And there's Greg.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Howdy. I'd like to apologize out the door for my any weird glitches I may run into here. I'm using a new computer that is not really fully set up. Just the other one didn't want to play nice today. So I'm excited about this topic, though, and I'm disappointed that we're not doing the modesty one, because frankly, I was really looking forward to that. So next week, if Rhonda can make it, and Esta with.
I think that modesty is going to be an excellent topic. I really think that we need to do something that would really continue with the dialogue that was the conversation that was had on Reflections, and go from there, because I think that if we give our audience, everybody in the conversation, something that's more in sequence, I think that people can put the pieces of the puzzle together better. So tonight, the subject is love. What do you think it is? And so the question is put forth to our panelists tonight. What is love? Now, we can say that I love candy, I love eating, I love sports, I love my wife. Are they all the same? I don't think so. And so what are your thoughts tonight?
Actually, I'd like to see what Bob has to say about this one. He and I had a discussion recently about what love is, and he brought up something very interesting in his perspective on it. So, Mr. Graves, would you like to open?
Oh, I guess. The word, we use it in so many different ways that, we're going to get ourselves into trouble if we say, well, this isn't love, that isn't love. I mean, because we use the word in a variety of ways. Perhaps if I used a different word and show you how we use it in different ways. For example, the word run. If I were to say to you, I gotta run, but while I say that, I'm wearing a jogging outfit, jogging in place and headed for the door, you get an impression of what I'm talking about when I talk about run. But if I say, I gotta run, and I'm wearing a business suit, and you see me grabbing my briefcase and my car keys, although it's a similar thing of an urgency to go, it's not that I'm going to go and run. I just have to get there quickly, Or if I, wearing that same business suit, pick up my pant leg and point to a thread that's coming unraveled in my dress sock, I say, I've got to run. That word run, you see, means so many different things. And the same thing is true of the word love. We use it in many different ways, and then we forget that we use it in different ways and then treat it as if it's all the same. To me, the love that we're talking about when we're talking about that the world needs love, or that we need to love our children, or we need to love ourselves, we need to love our neighbor, this is a love that has it doesn't have anything to do with emotion. It is a value system. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not open to the emotional experience, but the love itself is not an emotion. It is a recognition of inexpressible, inarticulate, high value that we recognize as the kind of a value that urges us, motivates us towards various kinds of actions. We realize that there's something of value here that our behavior needs to maintain as inviolate, needs to protect, needs to celebrate. We also recognize that there's certain things we shouldn't do that would violate it. So I see that kind of love as something that has to do with a recognition of great value to the point that it compels us towards a set of behaviors that do and do not create the sort of outcomes that are appropriate to that high value.
Bob, there are many people today talking about unconditional love and acceptance. Could you expound on your thought based upon the idea of unconditional love in the context of how you are utilizing the term love?
Well, certainly, because that, in a sense, the high value that you have as an existence is different than the value of, say, your behavior, different from the value of your knowledge. And there's a sense in which your existence is something that, without regard to all the other things that might come in the package deal, is something that is valuable, and there's nothing that can ever alter that. And so consequently, unconditional love, as I understand it, is not saying, well, I'm not going to place any conditions on it. It is a recognition that there aren't any conditions you could put on it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think, Greg?
I don't know, because the way that I've approached this in the past, and I wanted to explore Bob's feelings more on it, was because or his thoughts, I should say. I've always considered love to be an emotion, or an emotional state, not necessarily a singular emotion, as it were, something along the lines of, rage or passion, or I don't know if I can come up with other good examples, but this is relevant to me specifically in my show that I do with Joey, Clash Course, because we've been talking about the Epicurus quote about the idea of an omnipotent, omniscient, all-loving God, and of course love needs to sort of be understood and defined in that way for us to even consider it. And then we moved on to what can love be expressed if there's no such thing as suffering. So tune into Clash Course for more on that. But I have trouble understanding even, I guess, how we can draw a distinction between what a value is and what is an emotion. I mean, are our values not driven by emotion? Is that
they're definitely intertwined. For example, I'm a guitar player, I'm a professor of sound engineering, I'm a husband, I'm a father. Where do we draw the line? I'm me. Where did these things come in? And the truth is, as a sentient being, I have thoughts, I have feelings, I have emotions, I have these things, and I don't experience these things necessarily as separate processes and concepts. I'm just me, and these things kind of come together. But as we talk about various different features and facets that we might artificially isolate in the experience of being, I think that when it comes to love, we need to artificially separate it from the emotions that attend it. For example, if I truly value my daughter, and I see my daughter doing something that is going to injure herself, I can be astonished and frightened And in the moment that I'm astonished and frightened what she's about to do, there's no affection at all that I'm experiencing, but my care and concern about her value, her high value as an existence, is something which is definitely engaged in the shock or the that I'm going through. If somebody that you care about and value is suffering, the pain that you feel is definitely a very real emotion, but it is an emotion that is operating out of the perception that this person is of great value and that their suffering is somehow dissonant to that high value in a way that we find unpleasant. So you can't separate the emotions, as if love can't exist without emotions, but the love itself is not an emotion, it's a value.
Estan, why don't you jump into the conversation?
Okay, let me get back where I can see everybody. I was looking something up. Actually wrote a paper on this one time. I wish I knew the topic in advance. I know back when I was studying biblically what love meant, that there were many different types of love, different words used in the Greek. I believe there were 6, maybe 7 of them. And phileo was the brotherly love, a love you would feel for a brother or a close friend. And then there was eros, which is romantic love, an attraction. And then also agape, that's the big one. That's the unconditional love. That is the love that children should feel from their parents, without any fears of any mistakes that they would make, regardless of what they've done, that they have been given the understanding through example that they are unconditionally loved. No matter what you do, there's no way that I'm going to stop my love for you. So those are 3 that I can remember.
There's storge,
which is
familial love, the love that one has for one's offspring.
Okay. So like I said, I think we're only missing 2 or 3 there. But to me, what else goes if I'm talking about how I love my husband, that love is consistent, faithful, supposed to be unselfish. That's a hard one. Strong. I mean, there's a huge affinity there. The ability to divide that is probably going to be impossible. So there are other attributes that love, to me, contains, but that might only be from my heart. I don't know, and I don't think that's a definition that we use to communicate. But affection for a person, strong and constant affection, actually is a definition from the dictionary.
This is one of the thing that I would say about that is that this shows that we use the word love in many ways. But if we were to really examine each of those things that you talked about, they really are cognitively different operations. And so when I say that I love my wife, Lisa, trust me, I'm not just talking about the fact that I value her existence as something that is inarticulately high value. I enjoy her. I enjoy being connected to her. I enjoy the proximity. And although that's a part of the context of our relationship, and we call that love, and I don't have a problem with calling it love, when we're talking about the sort of love that the world needs. The truth is, affection is a very self-centered emotion. That's not bad, that's not wrong, but when I have affection towards my wife, there's a sense in which she pleases me. It is a pleasure to me that her existence is in proximity and in connection to me. That says an awful lot about what she means to me. And it's wonderful that she means that to me. But I'll tell you something, there is very little difference between the affection of a man who maturely loves his wife and a man who controls and possesses her. The real difference is that the man who controls and possesses her doesn't really value her high value as an existence.
That's good. You know, one of the things that I do want to say about, since you brought this up, Estan, many people are under the assumption that agape is God's love,
Right.
that kind of thing in church. The term agape and phileo, and etc., all these different Greek terms are actually interchangeable. And so you could say that these could be used one and the same as the other words, because these terms are simply phonemes, and it's very arbitrary, that is, language is, and so we assign things in certain ways. But unfortunately, in theism, I think that we have actually wrongly tried to say everything agape must be of God and everything phileo must be brotherly love. And historically, that hasn't been the case, because these people were struggling with different terms. That
Right.
is, years ago, trying to wrestle with saying love in various ways about the same thing. And so tonight it would be interesting to see if we could say love with maybe 10 or 15 different English words like they did back in, the days of Jesus, for example. And so I just wanted to make that point.
Dr. Jones, you might
Yes.
agree with this, that the reason why agape became the so-called love of God in the New Testament is that when the Old Testament Septuagint was translated, agape was chosen as the Greek word to be representative of the concept of chesed from the Old Testament, and at that time, we're talking way back before Christ, that word did have, although in some ways they were interchangeable, that word had more to do with the love of commitment, not necessarily the love of attraction and affection. So that's why Jesus was even translated as when he said that they love darkness rather than light. He uses the word agape there.
Right.
So even the Bible doesn't use the word agape as God's love.
Right.
But
the Septuagint, to be particular here, it was simply based upon a rendition, namely of oral tradition and oral modeling, and it was based upon which tribe was actually in power at the time. And so many other tribes were using different terms to express, the same thing.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be understood that so many other terms could have been used and have been used by the Greeks.
It was just a tradition.
Exactly.
That was my point. It was just a tradition, and so the church continued that tradition and overstated it.
Right. In other words, the Republicans were in power at the particular time that some of this stuff was going on, so it was a Republican or a Democrat thing. And so it's been very, very political. And so if we can get past the politics of all of this, and I do want to go ahead and hear from our new person here on the panel. I think his name is Darren.
Darren.
What are your thoughts?
Well, for love, I would imagine that. You have to distinguish between what the manifestations of that love is. Brotherly love, that kind of thing. Its uses, its value to you, or its actual source. And I think once you sort of figure out where you want to come from, once you figure out its source, I think figuring out what it is and what uses it has, it becomes a lot easier. Because ultimately love is a chemical process in the brain. It's there to connect us with families because we evolved as social species.
Do you think that people genetically some people are more prone to love than others?
I think that's what the evidence points to. That's why we have sociopaths.
We don't know if sociopaths are made or if they're actually people who are more capable of being made into sociopaths than others. It appears that we certainly come into this world with certain predisposed leanings, and
That's why you have antidepressants work, because they change the chemical makeup of the brain, and you go from all the sad feelings to more of the loving feelings.
Alex, jump into the conversation.
A couple of things. I agree. My definition of love, I agree very, very much, very strongly with Bob. I went when I was a theist. I did the whole agape, storge concepts of breaking down love, but ultimately now, the way that I see love is a behavior. It's not a feeling at all. It's I'll have to digest the concept of value, but it is a behavior. When I say love, which I don't, when I say I love somebody, and I sincerely mean that I love somebody, I'm trying to say that I'm putting that person beyond myself. So it is, in a way, not necessarily self-sacrificial, but I'm putting the needs of somebody before my own. That's what I mean when I say I love somebody. So it's better to say, I would rather say I am acting in love to you as opposed to I love you. I'm a little bit like a stickler for that kind of definition when I say love. Otherwise,
That's awkward to say, though.
Yeah.
But
It is, yeah.
But is it
I would
true
say
that
this-
maybe sometimes when we say that, like if I'm talking to my wife, I love you, honey, could it be polysemous or polysemous?
Could you define polysemous?
Well, I'm
please?
simply saying, could it have more than one meaning at the same time? In other words, when we say I love you, could it be much variegated, is my point. I mean,
Well, I mean-
we do have the potential of being polysemous, and it's sometimes what we do to say a lot with just one term.
I mean, in the context of casual discussion, I mean, yeah, I could throw love around to mean a lot of things. But when there's that important time where I want to clarify what I mean by love, or when I say I love you, and I that's what I mean. Like I could say I love lollipops, which, or I love my dog, or something. Those are maybe different definitions, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll say, I love ABC.
Yeah, I would also say I think we can, because everything that we do is a combination of motivation, behavior, outcomes, perception, all this stuff that sometimes we can talk about love from the standpoint of what motivates the behavior, and sometimes we can talk about it from the standpoint of the behavior. And if there's one thing we've discovered from even psychology is that two different people can behave in an identical way, but for two different reasons. And so it's possible for people to be patient, but not because they love. People can be patient because they've learned how to wait for the kill. People can be kind because they're trying to make sure they don't alienate you for when they get a chance to exploit you. So the truth is that love is a behavior. Many times there's an agenda, there's a goal for that behavior. That behavior is sought to create a particular outcome or to protect a particular thing. And so that's why I go back to the value that motivates the behavior. That's why even sometimes the motivation can be sacrificial. And I would even go to say this, from a standpoint philosophically, I don't believe I need to sacrifice myself for anybody in terms of the value there. I do not consider anybody as more important than myself. I don't consider myself as more important than anyone. But there are some times when we have to be very practical, that we don't live here alone, and that sometimes I have the ability to be just fine without having to make sure it's all about me, and somebody else may need something right now because they're particularly vulnerable. And so it makes complete sense that in their high value and in my high value, this would be a great opportunity for me to forego and to defer to their need. But there's a sense in which I guess I don't believe in self-sacrifice in a sense.
So,
that way.
Bob, there's nobody that you would, I guess, lay your life down for without thinking about it? That's, I
Well,
find
say
that
that
hard
again.
to believe. There's nobody that you would lay your
You
life
broke-
down for without thinking about it?
Well, if I were to lay my life down without thinking about it, I'd be laying it down without thinking about it.
Well, yeah, I think I'm using a little bit of a figure of speech with you
Yeah.
without thinking about it there. Somebody who you wouldn't have to think twice. You wouldn't second guess yourself. I mean, you would not, run out in front of a truck to push your wife out of the way and save her life, knowing that it was going to cost you yours.
Knowing that it would cost me mine, I don't. I would be concerned that if I were to try to do something knowing it would cost me my life, that I would do it so ineptly it would cost us both of our lives. I would probably do it as a response to the concern of what would happen to her, having completely forgotten about myself. But I would think that if I was truly cognizant and aware of what this could cost me, I would be concerned that behaving under that constraint might actually make me inept at the thing I was going to undertake.
I feel like that's a bit of a dodge of the question.
It may seem like it, but I mean that most sincerely. Let me put it. What if I was in front of a truck, and my wife could push me out of the way? I don't know that I want her to do that.
Right. Regardless of what you'd want of her, I think that betrays the way that love works, and I think Alex made a great point in that, in saying that the valuation of somebody else higher than yourself. Any two people that love each other would both obviously mutually do that.
I see that as chit chat. I see that as political talk. Somebody is more important than yourself. That I see that as an expression. It's impossible to be authentic, in my opinion, and to see anybody as more important than yourself, or to see yourself as more important than anyone else, as an existence.
See, have you ever seen the movie John Q?
Yes.
That's a great example of what we're talking about. I mean, I don't mean to bring about any spoilers here. It's a great movie, but unfortunately, I'm using the reference. If there's anybody who's watching or participating right now who hasn't seen the movie and is upset about spoilers, don't listen. So there's a part in John Q where the story, it's Denzel Washington has a son who's dying. His heart does not work properly, and he does not have the proper insurance to get him the transplant that he needs. He gets put on the bottom of lists and bumped around. And long and short of it, he brings a gun into the hospital and says that he's going to get a heart, regardless of what has to happen with it. And he makes the very, I believe, rational choice, at least coming from a position of love, towards the end of the movie, that he knows that his heart is compatible with his son, and that obviously only one of them can survive with it. So he makes the choice that he is going to kill himself so that his son can live. And I view that as the perfect example, admittedly, fictional,
right,
but it's the perfect example of the situation that we're talking about.
I see it as a very touching story and an outrageously irresponsible thing to have done. What he put those people in that hospital through was not love, as I would see it. Now, I see the touching story, but I don't buy it.
Oh, you're talking I think you're generalizing love as in a behavior that he can do to everybody, and
absolutely,
and in that respect,
absolutely.
You're right.
If you don't love everybody, you don't really love, as far as I'm concerned.
But I think he's acting. You're talking about love being a value. He's acting with this value of his son's life.
Why would you make a difference, though, between one person's valuable life and another person's valuable life? On what basis? I don't get that. I don't see that. I understand.
Regardless if you understand it or agree with it, I mean, I think that it's.
I understand people feel that way, and I think it's. I understand people feel that way, and many people would make that decision, and I suppose that's their decision to make. But. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier with the chitty chat thing, that. There's no such thing as a selfless attitude or behavior. The thing is, it's that, in my opinion, it's the conscious effort to put yourself outside of yourself and put somebody else there. That's the difference. Not that you're getting to that point, but there is, at least 80% in that direction.
Perhaps this is semantical, in some sense, but. I don't see how that actually even makes sense To be honest, I think that there are. First of all, I live inside my body, and I am totally conscious in a sense of I'm always aware of where I'm coming from. I'm never aware of where anyone else is coming from until they share it or I can perceive it, and as a result, I have an unfair advantage of seeing things from my standpoint. And if I'm going to be making decisions that have an impact on others, I have to get outside of myself in order to do that in an honest and fair manner. And so I do see getting outside of myself as an essential part of what love demands of me. But I can't just operate from my own perspective. But I just don't understand how love can have any kind of preference for the value of one life over another.
Yeah, I wasn't saying I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. I didn't. I haven't made a decision about that. I'm not sure how to evaluate one life over another, but the concept of love was. I think we're in agreement, at least on that point.
Yeah, so I think it could be just semantical in these other situations. Many people are willing to make a sacrifice of some sort. I think that there are things that need to be done that could be so dangerous that the person doing them may not survive. And there's a sense in which a person has accepted that responsibility. I see that as a very loving sacrifice. As much as I'm against war, the fact that there are people willing to do what they believe is the defense of our country and pay the ultimate price for it, to me, that is awesome that they can do that. But we can't all go to war. We can't all do it effectively. And as a result, it's not everybody's job.
Darren, I want to encourage you to jump in because the way that we do it here, you just go. And so do you have any thoughts concerning what's being talked about?
If you have something to say that you're not comfortable with the just interjecting, feel free to, we can see you. Raise your hand and we'll, make sure we, or use the chat option as well if you're not as rude as the rest of us. I know Asta struggles with that.
Well, I don't really have a lot to add. I mean, you guys are covering most of what, the manifestations of love, how people are connected to other people, and, they use how they go about making determinations on what's more valuable to them, their own feelings of loss or bereavement, or, your feelings of love for another person. So.
Another distinction I think I would make here is this. My circumstances are not the same thing as the value of my existence. If I'm an employer and I'm involved in a very successful business, but I decide that all of my employees are going to get nothing but minimum wage, even though I'm making millions and millions of dollars, there's a sense in which my preference for myself has a lot to do also with my preference for my circumstance and my situation, and to me, I see that as lacking in love. When I think of people like Charles and George F. Johnson and these guys who built up the Endicott Johnson Shoe Company, the way that they built this company by trying to make sure it was a wonderful place to work for all the people they brought in. They made themselves fabulously wealthy by doing so, but there were a lot of people who were able to buy homes, get college educations, and live and retire and do really well because of the fact that they were able to work for that company. It was amazing, Those days are gone.
Let's get Christopher in here. He can bust some chops. Go for it, Christopher.
Well, hello, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? I had a couple things to add to the conversation. And so many things were brought up, I'm not quite sure what pie to dip my finger into first. So I guess I'll just make general statements. That's always the good way to go, in my opinion. So as far as talking about love, based on my experience, people view it so differently and with such individual difference that sometimes it's hard to get on board with what another person views as defining love as as being the same thing that you do. And what I mean by that is some people feel that love means that you're responsible to do certain things, and that they are responsible to do certain things, that you might not feel those responsibilities exist as well, for you or for them. And the way that I like to think of it is like there's enmeshment. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a Venn diagram, some people imagine that the responsibility of the two circles are two people, and how much they overlap differs. People have a differing opinion of how much those two circles as two people should overlap when they're in a loving relationship. And so I think that kind of addresses a couple things that Bob was talking about, where he was saying, from his perspective, and I love the fact that he was being so honest about it. He was just like, I don't put people above me. And that kind of, that kind of really puts on the table where he's coming from in his definition of what love is and what his responsibilities are, and how he goes about them. Whereas other people would absolutely say that, the definition of love is putting somebody above yourself. And what I'm curious about is for the theists here, for the biblical version of love, is it always like fatherly? You know what I mean? Does it always ultimately come down to that at its essence?
I think the biblical definition of love is much variegated, as Dr. Jones might say. That it's kind of like the biblical definition of marriage. Well, the biblical definition of marriage is the union of a rapist with his victim. It's Solomon with his 1,000 wives. The Bible is really all over the place, just as we are all over the place. I think in the way that it sometimes uses this. I do think 1 Corinthians 13 is profound in terms of what the manifestation of love is. But, let me ask you this question. Does this world need more affection? We seem to have plenty of affection. Very few people live without affection for somebody. And we also tend to have affection for ours and those close to us, me and mine. But if there's one thing this world really lacks, it's that recognition, a profound recognition that human life is valuable, all of it. Everyone. And I think that would radically alter a lot of our behavior. I think that when we say what the world needs now is love, sweet love, that's the one love, that we really need more of than the other kinds that we might be talking about.
Well, Bob, I wanted to comment on that. We have, all of these different. I'm going to take this one, Christopher. We have all these different concepts of love, and you bring up this. The Christian values of love, or the 1 Corinthians, but there's another biblical reference that gets me, and that's I believe it's one of the most quoted Bible scriptures of all time, the one that people hold up at baseball games, across the country, and you see all the time. John 3:16, God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, and I think that's.
Disgusting.
To
be honest with you,
it's rude.
Disgusting the way that it is interpreted in particular. I think it's disgusting. Yeah.
Let's discuss for a moment the different ways that can be interpreted.
Yeah.
With
Greg,
one is if
Greg,
God
Greg,
is
hold
sending,
on for a minute.
yes.
Hold on for a minute. Christopher asked a question. I don't think that we really went full circle with it, but I'd love to get into the John 3:16. And if you guys want to go overtime tonight, that's fine for a few minutes. But, Christopher, you are making a valuable point. It seems like everyone talking about the Bible is always talking about the Father's love. Correct? Is that what you're getting at?
That's what it seems like. Paternalizing God. Yes.
Okay. Now this is me speaking. I think that what these writers are attempting to do is to use these anthropomorphisms and anthropomorphic ideas simply to nuance something that could relate to these particular people. And so it's very target sensitive and time sensitive. And so I don't think that if these writers were writing today that they would have used the term Father or God like they did back then. And so if we can picture for a moment using the term Father in a literary sense or the term God in a literary sense, that was done most of the time in most of what we call the rite of the New Testament. I'm not claiming that that's all there is to it, but I'm simply saying that when Jesus was speaking, he was simply using God in a literary sense and Father in a literary sense, trying to get a common person to be able to identify, that is, for the sake of application. I'm not suggesting that this First Corinthians passage has anything to do with a father's love towards children, yet it may have some application. But when I read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, stuff like love is patient, I think we would all agree with that. Love is kind, we would all agree with that. It does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud. We probably would all agree with that. But it goes a little bit further. It says love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. And it's not so much talking about a father, it's talking about, with my wife and I, if I hold resentment in my heart, or if I hold grudges against my children or whoever in life, if I'm holding something against you, for instance, it's not going to do me any good or you any good. And so the question is, this is meaningful here. This is some content that has some substance to it. Would you agree?
Well, I certainly hope that it keeps no record of wrongs was not applied to God's love for humanity, because I think that's the biggest. That's the thing that he keeps a record of wrongs.
No, he doesn't.
Well, I mean, the way the
According to
story gets
traditional.
told, for Jesus to even have to die, according to the traditional story, because of my sin, indicates to me somebody's keeping track of this.
Exactly. That's where John 3:16 comes in the Protestant and Catholic faith, and that's unfortunate. It's been spent in a very, very illiterate sense. And so, yes, there are various gods in the Bible. Most people in Christianity won't admit to that. And various writers are writing about various gods and various concepts of their different gods. And so when a writer like Paul comes along, he starts writing not so much about God, not so much about the Lord and Savior of the world or anything like that. He simply talks about things that we can, as human beings, utilize in our everyday lives to get along. And does that answer some of your question, Christopher? Because you brought up a brilliant point. I think that too many people are spinning, it's the Father's love, it's the Father's love. And theists love to chant. Have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was curious about the familial love as compared to non-familial love. How it's expected to. I don't know how to explain this, or I don't know how to articulate this concisely. The kind of love that you have for offspring, or for or for your parents, how that is different from the kind of love you feel for people that aren't in your immediate in-group, your nuclear family, like people that marry into it. The rules that change for those people, the rules that change for people that don't marry into it, that you have love for nonetheless. Like, I was just curious to know if there were biblical differences in those kinds of love.
Well,
I think that it depends on which author you're reading after as far as which direction they would take that, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like
And
to
it's-
address that question, Chris.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, I will. I was blessed to have two wonderful parents. And a part of the way that I experienced love as a child was having my needs met without any complaints. They were extremely concerned with whatever it was that I needed at all times, even till this day, even today, when my mom was here. Need meeting of the one that you love. That, to me, is love. Knowing the needs of the person and taking care of them for them. That to me is huge. So your question, give me it again one more time, because I kind of got a little bit caught up in how much I love my mom and dad. But go ahead.
Oh, awesome.
That's a great reason to have a tangent. No, I was just talking about the different kinds of love, like the specific one that you have for your offspring, for your
Okay,
parents. as
this is
compared
what
to-
happened to me in my life.
Go ahead.
I learned what love meant from my parents in that way. And very young, I remember, my mom tells me stories that, she had given me, I was in a stroller and she'd given me my bottle, and then I saw another child and I was like, have some, like you might be thirsty, because my needs were always met. So I became aware, so well aware of that other people may have needs. So I can honestly tell you that when it comes to that point, whether it be Paul, my children, my neighbor, a stranger, very sensitive to what others may be needing.
Go ahead.
So that, to me, is a love that extends beyond my immediate family, almost to the same proportion. Almost. I can't say, when needs. Now, here comes with the finances. I have to take care of my children, the household, the husband, all of that first. So that I wouldn't say is equal. But when it comes to compassion, empathy, time, resources that I have, I would say that I would welcome it, to in-laws or neighbors or even to strangers. That is like, there's no distinguishing there. There's no order just because you're my family or you're not. But that was
I
unique.
think Darren brought up a really good point in the chat. It sounds like a lot of the definitions we're talking about really line up in parallel with definitions of empathy, like giving
Right.
a crap enough about somebody to open those lines of empathy.
Empathy is part of love. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. You have
When
to
we-
understand the other person. You have to kind of put yourself in their position to know what it is that they need so that you can meet those needs. Because if you love them, you're going to want to give them, delight or pleasures or cherish them or those kind of things. So you're right, definitely.
When we're talking about family, we're also talking about people who, in the process of your growing up, you were in very close proximity with them. If you were to grow up and your mom and dad split, and your dad lived, say, in China for 15
Right.
years, and then he shows back up, and then your relationship isn't that close, and people say, this is your father, why can't you you can't treat this guy as if he's your dad when you don't know who he is.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of familiarity, but also the way we have structured our culture, we're responsible for our children. We get to know them. And I also would say that that experience that you had of your mom and dad meeting your needs, that I think that when it comes to this discovery that human life is valuable, that it's hard for us to make that discovery until we have a moment in our own lives when somebody else treated us as if our existence was really valuable, and it hits us, it strikes us. We love because we have been loved. And I do think that there's a sense in which when we are treated in a manner that communicates to us, you know something, it's wonderful that you exist, and your needs are very real and very vital and very valid and very important, and you're treated in this manner. And if you get the sense that you're treated in this manner because you're so valuable, then I think it's far easier to even begin to generalize that and then start spreading that out to others. But it's, in a sense, it takes a certain level of maturity to discover, how far-reaching it is. Because at first in the small family, you're not aware of the rest of the world. And so what have you.
We have someone.
Bob, I think
in
though.
Go ahead, Greg.
I think that I guess speaks against the point you were making earlier in saying that love, unless you love everybody sort of equally, or at least to some degree, you don't really love at all. I think that you were the one who used the word tribalism today.
So where's the contradiction? I don't see it. For example, if I'm going to go feed somebody who's hungry, I can't personally feed somebody who's hungry, who's not in front of me, that I can hand the food to. I can more easily feed people who are hungry, who are in front of me. And so the proximity and the accessibility of certain people does alter, in a sense, my responsibility in that connection. And not only that, but getting back to what Esther Ann was saying, there are some parents that sort of meet needs in kids, but they spoil them, they indulge them, and they teach these kids, I'm really more important than everybody. And there's a sense in which we have to watch out for that kind of enablement. But I do think that because of the nature of our structure, our families, our society, and where we're at, although I do think that all human beings are equally valuable, I don't see myself as proportionally responsible for all people in the exact same manner.
We have someone in the panel who has a lot of experience. We could call him Father Abraham. His name is Daryl Furlow. And he has more children than most orphanages have. And so he has a lot of experience that is in possibly loving his children and just getting along. And so what are your thoughts, Daryl?
Well, I've enjoyed what I've been hearing. I'll have to admit I agree with a whole lot of what I've been hearing. But let me state this first of all. This is something that's very dear to my heart when you begin to talk about love. Personally, I think it's the most valuable, the most precious commodity known to man. And as it is, I will admit that I lean heavily toward what we find in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Not just in word, but in experience. And I like to state this. I look at it also like this. I think that love is one of the most well-known facts there is, and yet at the same time one of the best kept secrets. Because I'm convinced, and it seems like this is pretty much across the board as far as I can tell, that if we really experience this toward, as Bob put it, toward everyone, I think we would be able to solve most of the world's problems. But unfortunately, also as a theist, I think Christianity at large has done more to discourage this than actually promote it.
Yes.
And I speak of this also from experience. Once I got away from this conditional, this exclusive, this the mindsets that we find within the realms of church, I feel a freedom, a sense of freedom that I've never had before, and it actually is a love that extends toward everyone. There's no one that I want to be rude to. There's no one that I actually don't want to be patient with. There's no one that I want to keep a record of wrongs toward, and I no longer see a God that does this. I know it's a cornerstone of what we know as Christianity, but I don't see it as valid, especially when we open this conversation about love. But I'll admit I enjoy this particular commodity, immensely, and maybe it does have something to do with having an orphanage.
Now, we are.
Hey, I got 20-something grandkids, so
Wow.
There's a lot of love to go around.
He is setting records for sure. We have a question that has come in, and I would like for each and every one of you guys to address it. The Cult of Honesty is doing wonderfully well. And do you think it has anything to do with love? What are your thoughts? Let's start with Christopher.
State the question again. It does what?
The question, and I'm paraphrasing the question, the Cult of Honesty is doing amazingly well. And the question would be, does this have anything to do with love?
I think it has everything to do with it, in the sense that the open forum that's given for people to express ideas, and feeling heard, and effective communication is the cornerstone of feeling loved, right? So I think that when people that are new to the cult of honesty come to the chat room or experience the Wednesday night hangouts, I think they walk away feeling loved, because nobody's there to bust their chops too hard, and everybody does it with a smile, or to challenge for the sake of discussion, or for the sake of education. And everything I see that's done is done out of love.
Nicely said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Great. Stan, what are your thoughts about this cult of honesty and the term love? I mean, is this what motivates our group?
I think so. Very much so. Personally, I take interest in the people that I interact with. I mean, I'll take interest in anybody who I interact with, but there are people in this group that I think are extremely intelligent, talented, hurting, love well. I try to encourage them, and I think that's love. There's a very young guy in there that has so much potential, and he cracks me up, and I'm always like feeding him information and giving him things because I care about him so deeply. And the same thing, I was typing, but I didn't hit the enter button. There you go on my feed. I mean, like if Chris says he's sad or he's tired or something, like I feel emotion for it. Like I share that with him for some reason. And that happens with me, with Alex too. And I told Alex that the other night. We were like chatting in private message, and he had that a medical issue this week, and he shared it with us, and he was saying it was bothering him, and I was like, oh, I just want it to go away, and I just met you guys like 2.5 months, maybe 2 months ago. Never met you guys in person, and yet we seem to be interacting in a way that is extremely loving. One thing that I've noticed is that there's a lot of acceptance, regardless of your beliefs, anger towards people. I think we are very accommodating, extremely tolerant, and it's actually working different than human society, in my opinion, because when people organize into communities or tribes, or then let's say more than communities, into societies, countries, alliances, or things like that, you have people that don't empower, that don't really care about others as much as position, power, and a lot of decisions are made behind closed doors, and I think that this is human nature. I'm not sure, I haven't studied it, but it's been my observation of any organization, be it a town, civil, church, whatever, school, there's corporate cultures, work. This group is unique. Everyone seems to have an equal voice. There's a lot of respect. I got mad at one guy, and I love him so much, but and I name called, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you stooped to name calling. But anyway, I just have such an affinity for so many people in this group, just for the sheer appreciation of who they are and their talents. I would say I never really experienced this before with such a big group. And admiration is huge. I value everybody in there, every single person. I actually try to back away at times. If somebody wanted to get in this group, I'd pop right out for them, so their voice can be heard. everybody's voice needs to be heard. People are valuable. People have ideas. We all have brains. We all have neurons. We all have huge, wonderful things. All of us, every single one. So like that's different in society. A lot of people like try to knock it down so they could go up in power, and I don't see that here. This is really open, honest, helping each other, valuing each other. I'm pretty much devoted already. I've never, I'm not going to give my age away here. I do in the group, but not here. But, I've been around a little bit of a while, longer than most, and I am so happy. Personally, I was a little depressed before I found this group because I had so much to say, and no one really wanted to hear what I had to say. It wasn't really important to them. What I have to say, I know is important to you guys, and that really makes me feel good because I think the basic need of any human being social beings, is acceptance and love. And it's provided here. It's provided here so strongly. And the joking is hysterical. I mean, I think we love each other so much that we can say just about anything. I said something quite off the wall to Bob. I was like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't take that wrong. But then I was like, screw it, he'll get over it. He's part of the family. He's going to have to get over it or, shut up, But, I don't know. I'm just very happy. And I think that with love, we can accomplish anything if we keep it this way.
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Alex, you know how to put things in a wonderful way. What are your thoughts about this cult of honesty and what we're doing here? Is it actually love or something else? Talk to me.
It's something in the water for sure. I mean, if you look at it from a distance, you're just gonna see. I mean, you're gonna see discussions, and you're gonna see that layer of kind of tolerance and acceptance and kind of openness, which I think is great. But to S's point, I've made relationships that I wasn't really expecting to have. I know a certain bass player who every once in a while I'll have a thought or something I want to get out, and it's like we'll jump on a video chat, and we'll have the greatest conversations, the most thought-provoking discussions, which I think are very, very helpful. And I think I'd really like to encourage people to speak up and get to know maybe other people as well, because I think once we're under this banner or this umbrella of acceptance and intellectual honesty, I think you get the opportunities to meet some wonderful people and some helpful people. So I think we're put in a position to love, if that makes sense.
Yes.
That's awesome. Darren, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I've only been part of the community really for about a week now. I watched the Sunday feed most of the day and chatted with you guys through that, and I found the community so far to be very very intelligent, very respectful. You guys really try to promote a connection amongst the people that are there, and I have to respect that. It's so far been a great environment.
Wow. Well, we thank you for joining us tonight. Let's go to Greg Bray. What are your thoughts?
I don't know how much that I can add to that, other than I think sort of summing a little bit on my side. Bob brought up familiarity earlier, and I think that speaks quite a bit to what love often means to us in a very personal sense. I mean, yes, we can say that we value and we love every human equally, but there's, I think, a a deeper and greater degree of love that we grant to our family, and that's of course the same root of familial or familiarity. And that's tribalism is one of the things that I like to fight against to a great degree, but at the same time, it seems to be almost something that is such an inbuilt part of human nature that there might not be getting around to it. So doing things like this is a way in which we have had incredible and rapid success in bringing this new level of familiarity to people across the world. I mean, we had, 2 weeks ago, people from 6 different time zones participating in this hangout, and it's marvelous to get these connections with people all around the world that really truly do become beyond just a faceless internet chat, and we become friends. We get that familial sense, and it's a deeper and I guess more guttural form of love that if we can't beat the tribalism, at least maybe we can use it in helping people start to consider more of the world in their tribe.
That was wonderfully put. Daryl, what are your thoughts?
Well, if I was still a church person, I would probably say amen about now. But instead, I would rather just kind of give an illustration from my vantage point as to what's already been stated. I've been in groups a better part of my life, and admittedly mostly church groups. But the difference that I see here is huge. Within the church groups, ones we've been part of in the past, there was even a lot of tribal connection, as Greg put it, family. And unfortunately, and I say this with much sadness, there's wedges there now. And I don't know, anyone who has known me in the past could be viewing this right now and see who I'm hanging out with, and they might even have problems with that. But when I look at this particular group of people and the ones that get involved with this movement, with this community, whatever you want to call it, I see something that's more in line with what I consider to be actually love. Because of the things that are being stated here. We are able to express ourselves and be respectful toward one another, and there's a purpose behind it. I think that I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that most of us are here because of love, because of love we have in us. We want to share, we want to participate, we want to connect, and so that's my thoughts.
That's good. Bob, let's go to you. Put it together for us.
Well, if I would have to say that in my younger days that children from a previous marriage, that I was certainly what I would consider a horribly immature father whose behavior was in many ways unloving, and how outrageous it might seem that someone like me is talking about love now. That there's a sense in which, just as we call ourselves, the place for honesty, we're not saying that we are honest, but that we're striving for it. And I see love here as something we strive for. And in terms of the tribalism, I think that when we have tribalism as an economy of behavior, and I don't mean that just as economy of money, but an economy of behavior, that's fine. But when it becomes an us versus them, then it's starting to overstep its efficient and useful bounds. But the last thing I want to really say, two things that I think about when it comes to love is that I think of love as coming from a motive that then engages in behaviors, but that have an outcome as their goal. And that therefore I don't really want to define, although we manifest love in our behavior, I think the reason why we choose those behaviors is because of the anticipated outcome we expect that behavior to produce. And that therefore sometimes love can do the thing that might not behave the way we would think it would, because we see something else that will also produce that outcome. So I see it a motive toward an outcome that is accomplished through a behavior. And the other thing is this, that I think that every single human being will become a better person when they have experienced what it means for someone to consider their dignity, to know no compromise, and their existence as inarticulately valuable. When you've experienced that from somebody, it changes you.
Wow, that's excellent. Christopher, I saved you for last, and it was intentional. When I watch your shows, the way that you treat your guests, ever so gentle, so kind. Sometimes my wife and I, we just start crying, and please understand who we are. We just sometimes tear up easily when we see people that kind. And you've had such a gentle touch on all of your shows, and I think this gives your guests the ability to talk. It disarms them in a sense. And so I want you to tell us something about this New Covenant group / the Cult of Honesty. What does it mean to you here?
Well, I think that if given the opportunity to keep doing my show, I think that there's an actual thirst for people having conversations in such a way that the civil and respect manner in which we engage with people, and the empathic listening, and the ability to let people who think in paragraphs, letting them talk in paragraphs sometimes, really lets their opinions shine. And, it comes back to what I said earlier. Sometimes it's just a matter of feeling heard, it being the cornerstone of good communication, and good communication being the cornerstone of feeling loved.
Wow, that's excellent. Now, Greg, as we typically do, we like to go to you to end in this show with prayer sometimes, and so I'm going to ask you to close out in prayer. It's meaningful to us here because we've learned that it really doesn't matter whether you're an atheist or a theist. We just love people. And so would you close out in prayer for us?
Yeah, normally I do these a little bit tongue-in-cheek and have some fun with them, but prayer is one of those terms that generally has a very religious connotation to it, and is almost exclusively used in that context. But I would love to change that to some extent. As a matter of fact, when my wife is Catholic, she says grace before meals, and that is something that it always sort of, I don't know, it seems a little empty and sort of just a rote repetition. So when when she does that, I keep suggesting, and we've yet to implement this, but instead of just saying that in your prayer, to also list things that you're thankful for and things that you would like to change. So I'm going to do that for my prayer today. Just a few short things that I am extremely thankful for is, of course, everybody who participates in this group and the technology that allows us to do this. But beyond the technology, it is the humanity that allows us to do this. The fact that we all have this drive to seek out one another and seek this relationship it's an incredible thing that I can't understand, and I can't even fathom the depth to which it could be plumbed. So I'm extremely thankful for that. I'm thankful for all of the insights that I get from all of the diverse people that we have in this group. And I'm thankful for the opportunity myself to have this as both a creative outlet and a social and personal connection for that. Now, the one thing that I would love to change would be for us to never have enough room to accommodate all the people that we'd like, even if we were running this 24/7 and always had that conversation going on. Thank you.
Amen.
That was wonderful, wonderful. Well, this has been the Cult of Honesty, and you've heard from atheists and theists alike, and hopefully you can see that we're not so different. We're human beings just trying to move forward a little bit, trying to be honest to the best of our ability, trying to find and discover a better meaning for love, and feeling like we have the right to do so without staying stuck in fixed beliefs and past notions of X, Y, and Z. And so, without any hesitation, good night.